Let's face it, there are a lot of tools out there to help you with your espresso prep. Sometimes I feel like every month someone invents a new product or technique to help you chase the perfect shot. But are they all necessary? And what do you actually need to brew a good shot of espresso consistently? Hi there, Bryan here with Whole Latte Love. Maybe I'm sounding a bit curmudgeonly here, but I do think it's challenging to stay on top of all the new gadgets and innovations constantly being made in the attempts to perfect a 100-year-old drink. But you know what? One of the best things about brewing espresso is that it isn't as much about perfection as it is about consistency. When you take into account all the volatility and unpredictability of pumping near boiling water through a semi-enclosed environment full of powdery particles, it's safe to say you'll never get the exact same shot of espresso twice. For me, that challenge of getting repeatable results is what makes brewing espresso such a rewarding activity. In this video, I'm going to go through a step-by-step guide of espresso preparation where I'll cover some popular tools and techniques and lay them out in a more visual way, almost like a roadmap to get you from ground coffee to brewed espresso. At the end, I'll take you through the method I personally use to brew my espresso at home. But the idea here is that there are many roads that you could travel from point A to point B, and ultimately what route you take is entirely up to you. Real quick, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to turn on notifications. We're constantly working on new product reviews, technical instructional videos, live streams, and our spin on educational content like this that helps you make better espresso at home. In training baristas working in a cafe, there are more standards in the workflow that need to be followed to best serve the customer. But as a home barista, you can take your time. You're the one drinking the coffee, so the only standards that need to be met are your own. So what works best for some might not work best for you. And that's why I wanted to make this video. Not to tell you how you should be making your espresso at home, but instead to give you the information and the tools to make up your own mind on what process you want to use. Now, I'll be showing you shots being pulled using some of the methods I discuss in this video, but not every single possible combination will be represented. To do that, I'd have to show you 927 shots of espresso being pulled. At 30 seconds a shot, this video would be nearly 8 hours long, so I figured I'd save us both that time. Let's get started. For this video, I'm going to be using a standard 1:2 ratio for my espresso with an 18-gram dose. The starting point for the process is going to be grounds coming out of a grinder. Now that might seem like a fairly simple part of the process, but you already have several different options. You could catch those grounds straight into your portafilter, you could use a dosing funnel on your portafilter, or you could grind into a dosing cup to shake and add to your portafilter afterwards. Grinding directly into your portafilter is by far the easiest and fastest option here. If using this method, I like to give the portafilter a gentle shaking while grinding, similar to popping corn on a stovetop. This helps level out the grounds a little to avoid having one big mound right in the middle. Dosing funnels are a great way to prevent flyaway grounds from finding their way onto your countertop instead of your portafilter. Dosing funnels also make distributing your grounds a whole lot easier as well, but we'll get into that more in the next segment. Although the most involved method, grinding directly into a dosing cup is by far the cleanest, as you can almost guarantee all of your grounds will make it into your cup. It is also the easiest way to weigh your post-grind dose. Flip transferring into a portafilter also provides a nice pre-distribution of the grounds in a way that the other two methods don't. At this juncture, we have 3 portafilters filled with ground coffee, and this presents us with what I'm going to call our first exit ramp off this route to espresso, because you could simply tamp and pull your shot from here, or you could keep going down the road towards greater consistency. Here's 3 bottomless shots pulled with just these preparations. As you can see, the dosing cup provided the best flow through the puck, while the other 2 options created some straight line over extraction due to poor distribution, which flows perfectly into our next act. If you choose to keep the road trip going, so to speak, the next step in the process would be properly distributing the grounds in the portafilter. The goal in this step is to rearrange the grounds in the basket to create a more level surface for tamping and to break up any clumps your grinder might have created for a more homogeneous collection of grounds, which leads to a better, more uniform flow of water through the puck. For that, the 3 main options here are simply tapping the outside of the portafilter to better level the grounds, using a WDT tool to whisk your grounds, or using a leveler distribution tool. Portafilter tapping was definitely my preferred method back when I worked in busy cafes because it's quick and easy and really does a pretty good job. The other 2 options also weren't really widely available back then either. Yeah, I'm pretty old. Using a Weiss distribution technique or WDT tool like this Weidemann whisk here is a great way to mix up the grounds and break up clumps throughout the entire basket from top to bottom. If you use the dosing funnel in the previous step, it also proves very useful when using a WDT. You can be a little more vigorous with your whisking without worrying about losing any grounds. A leveler distributor is a great way to get your bed of grounds nice and flat and ready to tamp. While levelers really only redistribute the grounds on the surface of your puck, having a nice level surface to lay your tamper on before you compress your grounds is going to make performing a nice level tamp that much easier. Now, an important note about this step is that these three options are not mutually exclusive. You could do one, two, or all three if you wanted to, but for the sake of time, let's just show extractions from each individually. In comparison to the first three, you'll notice a lot more cohesive flow with the stream grouping up in the middle much faster when distribution technique is used. Like before, you could just tamp and pull your espresso from here, but since tamping is the next step in the process anyway, let's move straight on to those options. There are a whole lot of different types of tampers out there at your disposal, but whether it's a manual tamper, self-leveling tamper, pressure regulating tamper, electronic tamper, whatever, they all compress the grounds in the basket to restrict the flow of water through the coffee for better extractions. For this video, we're just going to focus on using a manual tamper, but if you'd like more content on how to use calibrated tampers or automatic tampers, let me know down in the comments. The three tamping techniques I'm highlighting here are straightforward single level tamp, tamping multiple times, and whether or not to polish the top after tamping. If you use a self-leveling tamper or any kind of automatic tamper, at least part of the process of the tamping is done for you. But if you're using just a regular hand tamper, I've got a couple quick tips for you. Firstly, you'll want to hold your tamper similarly to how you would grab a doorknob, but with your thumb and side of your index finger on the base. In this position, just push down on your coffee until it stops. This makes it so that there's really only two true contact points on the tamper. So if you're new to tamping, you might find yourself being either thumb heavy or finger heavy. You can check by comparing the surface of your tamped coffee against the top lip of the basket. If you ever notice your tamp is a little crooked, here's an invaluable tip. Use your WDT and go back in there and loosen the compressed grounds back to the way they were before you tamped. This gives you another chance to put the perfect tamp on your grounds and it won't affect your shot at all. Now, there are some out there that think that one tamp isn't enough. Multiple tamps are another way to possibly correct an imperfection on your initial tamp. Tamp down, lift up a little, and then press again. As long as you're consistent with your tamp amount and pressure, it shouldn't negatively affect your results. And now, if you don't know what I mean by polishing, it's a technique where you spin the tamper after compressing the grounds to clean up the top surface a little. It may seem like this flourish is a bit performative, but some people still swear by it. Here's the bottomless extractions of all four of those possibilities of tamping. As you can see, there's not much difference in how these extractions look, so really do what feels right to you. Moving on now to the last fork in our journey, I'm going to apologize ahead of time here because one of these options is a little out of order, but I feel like it makes the most sense here, and it's my video, so deal with it. Now that we have our beautiful tamped puck of espresso, there's really just one thing left to do. Add a puck screen or a filter. Firstly, let's talk about puck screens, like this E&B Lab one I have here. The benefits of puck screens are twofold. One, they better distribute water across the entire surface of the puck, and two, they help keep the group head a little cleaner. I also really like how the E&B Lab one comes with this little magnet to more easily remove it after each use. You also have the option to add a paper filter to the top of your puck. This serves essentially the same purpose as the puck screen, but can be disposed of along with your spent puck after brewing. Finally, and this is the one I mentioned earlier, you could add a paper filter to the bottom of your basket before adding your grounds. Like any other filter brewing process, I would recommend pre-wetting the paper filter before adding your grounds. This helps it form to the bottom better and removes papery taste from making their way into your espresso. Placing a paper filter at the bottom of your portafilter also helps keep your gear clean, gives you maybe a little cleaner espresso in your cup, and thins the body and mouthfeel ever so slightly. Of course, this is another step where you can choose either one or all three of these if you really wanted to be a rebel. An important thing to note here is that if you plan on putting a paper filter at the bottom of your basket, you're going to want to grind a little coarser, which you can see by how slow that extraction is. Using a puck screen or paper filter on top didn't really change the extraction or flavor in the cup at all. Now, before we move on, I thought it would be interesting to show an extraction utilizing all possible over-the-top steps. That's grinding into a dosing cup, tapping, WDTing, and leveling, tamping twice and polishing, and using both paper filters and a puck screen. It doesn't look terrible, but I feel like there's an easier way to do it that provides better results. As promised, I'll now take you through my personal home espresso routine with what I do at each of these steps. Firstly, I almost exclusively grind into dosing cups. The ability to weigh my dose in the cup before adding it to the portafilter makes things so much easier. It also just keeps my countertop noticeably cleaner. The pre-distribution of grounds that shaking and flip transferring into the portafilter is a real game changer. I found that shaking the grounds beforehand helps break up clumps, which makes our next step that much easier. Moving on to distribution, I always use a WDT. I start with it all the way to the bottom and use a circular motion as I slowly lift it up until I'm eventually just grooming the top. On this step, I double down and then use a leveler set to as shallow as it goes to give myself a nice pre-flattened surface to tamp. When tamping, I'm old school and prefer just a simple hand tamp like this Eureka one here. I place it loosely into the portafilter first and then press it onto the edge of the countertop until it stops. I find that this helps me keep it level as I tamp. I tamp once and get out of there with no polish of the puck. Now, as far as the last step in the process, honestly, I skip it entirely. Once I tamp, I pull my shot. That said, I have many coworkers and friends who absolutely love their puck screens. And don't get me wrong, I have used them, they just never really caught on for me. As far as paper filters, I've learned over the years that I really love a thick-bodied espresso, so anything that gives me less body in the cup, I tend to avoid. Limiting my paper waste is also something that I'm pretty passionate about. So here's an extraction with my puck prep. Now I really want to reiterate here what I said earlier. Just because that's how I personally make my espressos every day does not mean that you should necessarily do the same thing. I'm also not trying to claim that what I have presented in this video is an exhaustive list of everything that could be done to prepare espresso. These are just some highlighted techniques that I feel I see the most often. This is where I turn it to you. Did I cover the process you prefer to use? I would love to know what you find works best for you, so leave it in the comments for me and everyone else to see, and who knows, maybe you'll teach us all something new and interesting. I gotta say, I had a lot of fun making this video, so if you enjoyed it, it's definitely worth your while to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Once again, I'm Bryan, thanks for watching, and check back soon for more of the best on everything coffee. Brought to you by Whole Latte Love.